Living without a permanent home can look incredibly cheap. No rent, no mortgage in a home you live in, fewer utility bills, no furniture to replace, and if you are house sitting, your accommodation may be provided in exchange for looking after someone else's home and pets. That sounds like a financial shortcut, but the real cost is more complicated. The housing cost does not disappear, it just changes shape. There are also costs that never appear in a budget. So today I want to give you the honest look at the real cost of living without a permanent home. Not to convince you to do it, and not to frighten you away from it. I want to help you work out whether the lifestyle would genuinely give you more freedom or simply move your expenses into a different category. Matt and I have lived without a permanent home for several years. Most of that time has involved house sitting around Australia. We have also completed shorter house sits in New Zealand. And Panama has been our first longer experiment living this way in another country with a different language and culture. We love traveling, and that is an important part of why this lifestyle works for us. The first financial lesson: gross savings is not net savings. When people talk about house sitting, they often focus on the rent they are avoiding. That is the gross savings. That is useful, but it is not your net savings. Your net savings is what remains after you subtract the new costs created by the lifestyle. Those costs matter. The basic calculation is housing cost avoided minus new costs created by living this way. That gives you a more honest estimate of the financial benefit. This distinction is important in every area of personal finance. A saving is only useful when you understand what it cost you to achieve it. Cost 1. The accommodation gaps. The first major cost is the gap between house sits. This is usually where the budget becomes less predictable. A sit ends on Monday, the next one begins on Friday. You now have 4 nights to cover. You might stay with friends. You might camp. You might use a motel. You might book an Airbnb. Or you might choose a more expensive short-term option because there is nothing affordable nearby. In the early years, Matt and I managed some of these gaps with a Suzuki Swift and a 2-man tent. That kept our expenses low, but it also required a great deal of planning. Later, we bought and converted a van. That made the gaps easier, but the van was not free accommodation. More recently, we have sometimes used motels or Airbnb. In one recent 12-month period, our paid accommodation during house sit gaps came to less than $3,000. That is still far below the cost of renting for a full year, but it is not zero. If you are considering this lifestyle, create a separate accommodation gap budget. Do not assume every sit will connect perfectly with the next one. Your gap budget is what protects your lifestyle from becoming an emergency every time the calendar does not line up. Cost 2. Transport becomes part of your housing system. The second cost is transport. When you have a permanent home, transport gets you to work, shops, family, and appointments. When you live between homes, transport also moves your entire life. That changes the calculation. In Australia, we usually had our own vehicle. That gave us flexibility. The van made this even more complicated because it served 2 purposes. It is transport, and during gaps, it is accommodation. So it would be misleading to call the entire cost a transport expense. It would also be misleading to call the entire cost a housing expense. It is both. This is where the idea of total cost of ownership becomes useful. The purchase price is only the beginning. International house sitting created a different transport problem. Here in Panama, we expected our Australian licenses and international driving permits to give us more flexibility than what they actually did. Because of our residency status, the driving rules affected us differently. So we have been using local buses instead. That has been an interesting experience. It has also reminded us that an international driving permit is not a universal permission slip. Different countries have different rules. So before accepting an international sit, check whether you can legally drive, whether your insurance will cover you, whether public transport is available, and whether the home can be reached without a car. A remote, beautiful house sit can become very expensive if every grocery trip requires a taxi. Cost 3. Your income may change. The third cost is often overlooked. Can you keep earning while you move? For Matt and me, the ability to work online has been one of the biggest benefits of house sitting. We could travel around Australia. We moved into a home for several weeks, set up our computers, continued working, look after the pets, and explore the area outside of working hours. We were not taking a conventional holiday every time we changed locations. We were temporarily living somewhere new. That meant we could keep earning while we traveled, but our circumstances are specific. Not everybody can work remotely. If your job requires you to be in one workplace, traveling between house sits may reduce your income. It may force you to take unpaid leave. It may limit where you can go, or it may make the whole lifestyle impractical. Even remote workers need to check the details. Is the internet reliable? Is there a suitable place to work? Are there time zone problems? How much pet care is required during the day? Will the animal interrupt meetings? Can you leave the property for several hours? We have generally been able to set up in an office, spare room, or a dining area. For us, the work setup has usually been manageable, but it still needs to be confirmed before accepting a sit. The real financial calculation is not only how much accommodation will I save, it is also, will this sit protect or reduce my ability to earn? A free home is not financially viable if it causes you to lose more income than the accommodation is worth. If this is helping you look at money differently, subscribe for more practical finance and intentional living videos. Cost 4. Administration does not disappear. The fourth cost is administration. When you do not have a permanent home, ordinary financial tasks can become less straightforward. Banks may require a residential address. Investment platforms may require address verification. Your accountant may need a consistent contact address. These costs are not always large individually, but they add time, paperwork, and mental load. They can also create expensive problems if you get them wrong. For us, Panama has included a one-off cost such as residency application and permits. Those expenses should not be treated as a normal monthly cost, but they are still part of the price of building an international lifestyle. Cost 5. You may need to pay for storage. The fifth cost is storage. If you live without a permanent home, you need to decide what happens to everything you own. Some people sell almost everything. Some leave possessions with family. Some use paid storage. Some carry their belongings in a car or van. And some use a combination of all four. Storage can quietly become a substitute rent payment. You may no longer be paying for a home, but you are still paying to house the content of your home. That does not automatically make storage a bad decision. It may be temporary, or replacing them later may cost more than storing them, but the cost needs to be reviewed. If you are paying $2,000 a year to store items worth $3,000, the maths stops making sense very quickly. We own fewer clothes, fewer shoes, fewer books, fewer appliances, and fewer items that only perform one job. The benefit is not only the money we stopped spending, it is also the storage, cleaning, maintenance, and responsibility we avoided. Cost 6. Food can become cheaper or more expensive. House sitting often gives you access to a full kitchen, and that can make it much easier to cook. You may have a fridge, freezer, oven, cookware, and space to prepare meals. That can reduce restaurants and takeaway spending. But moving regularly can also increase food waste. Then, the house sit ends before you use them all. You either carry them with you, give them away, or leave them behind. We changed the way that we shop. We stopped bulk buying food simply because it was on sale. Instead, we buy what we expect to use during the sit. That has reduced food waste. We rarely have a pantry or a fridge full of expired food, but the trade-off is that we may not always receive the lowest possible unit price. A large packet may be cheaper per item, but it is not cheaper if half of it gets thrown away. That is a useful financial lesson beyond house sitting. The cheapest purchase price is not always the lowest cost. Waste matters, storage matters, and whether you will actually use the item matters. Cost 7. Pet care is real work. The 7th cost is the responsibility itself. On Trusted House Sitters, we are not paid to care for other people's pets or home. The arrangement is an exchange. The homeowner receives care and we receive accommodation. Most of our experiences have been good. We have cared for wonderful pets, stayed in beautiful homes, and met people we would never have met otherwise. But pet care takes time. Dogs may need to be walked once or twice a day. Some animals need medication. Puppies need attention. Older dogs may need extra care. And some pets have behaviours that are more challenging than the listing suggests. Out of more than 50 house sits, only 2 stand out as particularly difficult. One involved 2 large dogs in a small home. It rained for almost 2 weeks. The dogs were difficult to walk, and everyone had cabin fever. The owner later invited us back, and we politely declined. Another sit involved 2 cats and a puppy. One cat was delightful. The other cat did not appreciate our presence. She expressed her opinion by using the couch as a toilet. The puppy also required a great deal of attention. None of those issues appeared as a dollar amount, but they affected our time, work, and enjoyment. So before accepting a sit, ask detailed questions. Free accommodation is an exchange. You need to understand what you're agreeing to provide. Cost 8. Routine and community can be harder to maintain. The 8th cost is routine. Every move creates another reset. If the house sits are long, this is manageable. If they are short and frequent, the routine disruption can become exhausting. Community can also be affected. If you move around consistently, it can be harder to maintain. For us, this lifestyle has also created relationships. We have friends in different parts of Australia and now in different parts of the world. It has strengthened our relationship as a couple. We have had to communicate, plan, compromise, and deal with uncertainty together. But the lifestyle may feel very different for someone who needs a strong local routine and familiar community. You do not need to travel consistently to house sit. You can choose to sit in one city or region. If you want to remain near work, family, friends, church, local house sitting may give you many of these financial benefits with less disruption. The cost that does not fit in a spreadsheet. There is one final cost that is hard to calculate: uncertainty. I have historically been someone who values security. In the early years, not knowing exactly where we would be living several months ahead was difficult for me. I often organised sits well in advance. I wanted the calendar filled. I wanted to know where we would sleep and what would happen during the gaps. Living without a fixed home added another moving part. Matt handled uncertainty much better than I did. Over time, I became more comfortable with it. I learned that a backup plan was often more valuable than a perfect plan, but that adjustment took time. A lifestyle may look inexpensive on paper. If it leaves you consistently anxious, it may still be too expensive for you personally. The benefits still matter. After hearing all these costs, it may sound as though I'm trying to talk you out of this lifestyle. I am not. For us, the benefits have been significant. We have travelled around Australia, we have lived in multi-million-dollar properties, and we have lived in simple, comfortable homes. We have spent time with the most wonderful animals, and we have reduced the cost of housing ourselves. We have reduced waste, we have fewer things, and we have continued working while experiencing new places. That combination has given us something we value deeply: choice. The ability to travel without taking constant holidays, the ability to keep our income while changing locations, and the ability to design a life that is not built around one permanent address. The lifestyle has been worthwhile for us, but it has been worthwhile because the benefits are aligned with our values. We love traveling, we work online, we are comfortable living with fewer possessions, and we are willing to plan around uncertainty. Someone with different priorities may reach a completely different conclusion. How to work out the real cost for yourself. If you are considering living without a permanent home, create 2 columns. In the first column, list the costs you expect to remove. In the second column, list the costs the new lifestyle will create. Add a third column, call it the life cost. Some of those costs will be worth paying, and others will not be. The right question is not, is this the cheapest lifestyle? The better question is, does this lifestyle give me more value than it takes from me? We use Trusted House Sitters ourselves. If you are considering joining, our referral link is in the description. You will receive 25% off your membership. We will receive 2 free months added to ours. It is not a cash commission. It simply reduces our future membership costs. Only use the link if the platform genuinely suits your circumstances. Living without a permanent home has reduced some of our largest expenses, but it has also created new ones. The power went out. I'm going outside to get more light. We have gained travel, flexibility, lower fixed costs, and more control over the kind of life that we wanted to build. But the lifestyle is not free, and it is not automatically financial freedom. It is a trade. You give up some certainty. In return, you may gain lower housing costs, mobility, and more choice. Would you consider living without a permanent home? What would concern you most? The money? The uncertainty? The pets? Or the constant moving? Let me know in the comments. YouTube recommends that you might enjoy this video next.